All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first virtual 1883 speaker series. My name is Mike Wozniak, and I serve as the coordinator of leadership and programming in the Student Involvement and Parent Programs Office. In the next 18 minutes and 83 seconds, we'll learn a new lesson on leadership, as well as some advice to guide our personal and professional development. For today's speaker, please join me in welcoming the president and CEO of the Minnesota Twins, Dave St. Peter. Dave?
Well, thank you, Mike, and it is good to be with you all today. I want to offer gratitude to Mike. He's been a wonderful host, and of course, Cassie Gerhardt for the invitation to speak. I think I've only spoke with Cassie's invite one other time, and that was a commencement speech that I gave during a winter commencement several years ago, and it's the most nervous I've ever been speaking to a group, trying to convey some level of wisdom to the leaders of tomorrow. So I feel a little bit of that same way today. And I'm a guy that does a lot of speaking, but it's an honor to be part of the 1883 series. There's a who's who of people who have spoken as part of this series. I'm certainly very committed to the University of North Dakota, and I'll speak maybe to the why behind that. But my apologies for not being there in person. I understand this is the first virtual presentation, and I'm sorry to be breaking new ground there. I would rather be there with you in person. And I promise that I will impart a pitch clock. We will not go north of 18 minutes and 83 seconds here today. We'll finish up probably a little bit sooner than that. But I'm in my final days actually as the president and CEO of the Twins. I know there's probably a lot of fans across Twins territory that are excited about that news as well. I acknowledge that. We're in the midst of a leadership transition, all my choosing, opportunity to step away and maybe open some new doors and explore some new chapters in terms of the balance of my professional career. We're also at the gist of a potential sale of the Twins, which I'm playing a significant role in, and that's new ground for me. I've never been part of a process quite like that. But I'm excited about the future. I'm excited about the future for the Minnesota Twins. I think it's an unbelievable franchise, a gem of a franchise with a great ballpark, with an unbelievable history, and with a really talented group of people, both on the field and in the front office. And whether it's the Pohlad family continuing to own the team or a new owner, I think great things are in store for the Twins going forward. And I know there's probably a lot of Twins fans as part of this forum here today, and I think you have reason to be excited. I'm also excited for me personally. It's been a journey. I've been at this a long time, 35 years with the Twins, and I'm really inspired by the opportunity to perhaps reinvent myself and to perhaps create additional new, more dynamic impact, whether it be in the community, whether it be at places like UND or otherwise, as well as just getting some time back and re-engaging and perhaps investing more time in those people that matter to me the most. My story with UND really starts in Bismarck. I grew up in a very middle class family. I had a brother and sister that had gone to UND. I had many friends that were going to UND. I walked onto the campus in the fall of 1985 with no declaration of a major. I had buddies that were going into accounting. My dad wanted me to be an accountant because he was an accountant. Buddies that were going into engineering. I went through my freshman year and second semester freshman year, took an intro to mass communications class taught by Dr. Vern Keel and started to think, boy, this communications sector, perhaps journalism, broadcast, maybe public relations was something that I could get behind. About that same time, a buddy of mine who played football at UND came back to the dorm and had a University of North Dakota media guide. Great publication highlighting the history of the program, statistics, previews of opponents, bios on players. And I had grown up an unbelievably passionate sports fan. And the thought of combining maybe something where I had an interest in, to i.e., communications, with something I had a passion for, i.e., sports, resonated with me. And I decided at that point that that was going to be my focus. Declared a major over in the School of Communications with an emphasis in public relations. And then in addition to that, really knew early on that if I was going to be successful with this path, I was going to need to create tangible work experience and really build a resume, build a portfolio, so to speak. So everything I did from that point forward was focused on that. Knocked on Lee Bonet's door, the longtime legendary sports information director for the University of North Dakota, told Mr. Bonet that I had interest in volunteering just to be part of his team. He took me on, taught me the ropes. I worked every event I possibly could from my sophomore year through my senior year. Ultimately, worked got an opportunity firsthand to work with athletes, to work with coaches, to work with media, to do a lot of writing, and really hone those skills. In addition to that, I spent time at the University North Dakota student newspaper, the Dakota Student, and did a lot of writing as much as I could. Again, covering games, covering athletes. And then lastly, I stopped by the Grand Forks Herald and applied for work and was brought on as a copy aide for 2 years, and really got to see how the other side of the equation works on the media side, and build relationships and mentorships with people like Ryan Bakken and Kevin Fee and others. By the time I graduated from the University of North Dakota in 1989, I had that resume, I had that portfolio, and that was an unbelievable advantage for me. Looking back on it, the people that probably meant the most to me there were Vern Keel, Dave Varland, who was the public relations guru for the University of North Dakota for many years, who taught classes as well. And then a guy by the name of Bill Holden, who was a reporting, you had to get through reporting if you were going to major in communications. And I probably learned more about writing from Bill Holden than any other individual I ever met. There's no question in my mind that those days at the University of North Dakota led me to success. I would never have been a member of the Twins organization, let alone the president and or CEO, without the University of North Dakota. And for that, I can tell you, I am always grateful. What were the keys maybe to success during that UND journey? For me, it was that balance between classroom, where I knew I needed to be excellent and deliver good grades, but the work outside of the classroom, which at least in my major was ultimately going to be the thing that would open doors. Secondly, I will tell you, looking back, the priorities. There needed to be some sacrifices made because of the path I had chosen. I was at a lot of events. My friends, buddies would be going out, and I would have to connect with them later because I had a women's basketball game I was working, or a hockey game, or a swim meet, or whatever it might be. And I don't share that to complain about it. It was just the reality of the time. And I think you have to ask yourself where you are today. Are you prioritizing those things that are going to open doors down the road? And then I would just close with the thing where UND really had an impact on me is communication skills. From the many speech classes to the variety of different communications classes, I really learned to write at the University of North Dakota. I learned to present at the University of North Dakota. I learned about the media at the University of North Dakota. And there's no doubt in my mind that those skill sets have served me well over time and make a difference today. When I left the University of North Dakota, I ultimately ended up at the Minnesota North Stars. For those of you that are young enough, you might not know the North Stars were Minnesota's hockey team before the Wild. They now play in Dallas under the name Dallas Stars. And, from my perspective, the North Stars experience was great. I loved every minute of it and was really bitten by the professional sports bug. That did not lead to a full-time role. I ended up at the Minnesota Twins in February of 1990, and ultimately served that club as an intern for 6 months, and then became a full-time employee and have been employed by the Minnesota Twins every day since. I ultimately started in a retail role, managing a Twins pro shop. Again, kind of demonstrating that if you believe in yourself, if you focus on the job that's right in front of you, and you remain committed to building relationships, good things can happen. I ultimately had an opportunity to apply for a communications manager role. I did. I applied. I got that job in February of 1992, and certainly it thrust me more into the traditional front office. biggest break in my career was the Twins' efforts to build a new ballpark. Our ownership uttered the word new ballpark for the first time in 1995. We'd been playing in the Metrodome. You might recall the greatest home field advantage in baseball. But when we started to talk about a new ballpark, as the communications manager for the team, it put me in a role where I was spending a lot of time with team ownership, team leadership, with Major League Baseball, and many other advisors. And I think it's a story of we all go through our professional journeys, and we deal with some level of good luck and some level of bad luck. And I've always believed that the key to it is never getting too down when the bad luck happens, to realize that tomorrow's a new day and you can always work toward making things better. But in terms of the good luck, I think too often people fail to take advantage of it and maybe don't realize when good luck is knocking on the door. For me, what I say that based on this opportunity I had in the communications role working on a new ballpark is I had an opportunity to invest in relationships. I had an opportunity to build work product and ultimately to earn trust. And that really propelled my career through the front office, ultimately to being a vice president of communications, to being a senior vice president of business affairs, and then ultimately named the president in 2002. Those of you who would follow would know that we would go on and ultimately gain approval for a public-private partnership that would build a new ballpark, which is now Target Field. That didn't happen until May of 2006. But I look back on that and I can tell you that that new ballpark exploration and the opportunity to play a role in that was by far the biggest catalyst to my career success. As I think of other keys around my Twins journey, I think of building teams, and not just building teams on the field. I think that's the obvious one when you're a baseball team, but building teams in the front office. It took me a long time to understand the keys to this is find people who are smarter than you and give them some runway. And I try to do that in spades these days. But it's also important to remember to delegate. There were times early in my career where I felt like I needed to control the outcomes. I needed to control the process. And I think that if you're going to have an unbelievably healthy work environment and culture, delegation is absolutely critical. And it requires people, I think, to be intentional about that. In other words, hire good people and let them do their jobs. And then I'd say lastly, as I kind of get to the end of my Twins run, the thing that is probably most rewarding for me today is the investment in people, in really their own individual growth and development. And I see our younger employees coming into our organization today hungry for growth and development. That doesn't mean titles, it doesn't even necessarily mean money. What it does mean is how do we set these people up for success, these women and men who are looking to grow skill sets, grow understanding of our business, and ultimately become better long-term leaders. And I think that's an area that when you are a leader, you have a responsibility to give back. And I spend as much time as I possibly can in my role today focused on that. As I think of my overall career and kind of think back of 35 years with the Twins, I did want to touch upon nine things that in my mind are absolutely critical for success in no particular order. First, I would touch on work ethic. I'm a proud North Dakotan. I grew up, as I said, in Bismarck. And, my parents, my grandparents, they worked hard and I saw it. And when I showed up at the University of North Dakota or ultimately showed up at the Minnesota Twins, I pledged that nobody would outwork me. And that was pretty much the mantra for me the first probably 20 years of my Twins career. And I probably paid off. I probably got noticed because of it. I know I churned out a lot of work, and I built a reputation for being a hard worker. I will tell you the last 10 years, I've been more focused on trying to work smarter versus harder. And what do I mean by that? Technology helps, right? We're more connected now than early on in my career. And I think phones and emails and texts and they're blessings and curses, right? But you have to be smart about how you use those things and always try to be in the present with those people that you're around, particularly those people that you love the most. I had no work-life balance through the first 20 years of my Twins run, and I'm not proud of that. What I am proud of is over the last 10 years, I've worked really, really hard with some other people inside of the Twins, mainly our ownership, to create a culture where you can have work-life balance, where we've created, well, way more redundancies across our front office and really encouraged our employees to not just work hard and be part of our organization's success, but to be more present and to be more active as husbands or wives or as mothers or daughters or whatever the circumstances may be. Work is absolutely critical. It's important. We're a business. We want success, but we want the people working there to feel like as though they have that balance in their life. And I think if we can do that, at the end of the day, results will follow. The second thing I point to is humility. By far, the number one thing that I have seen trip up leaders in baseball, in our organization or others is ego. And ego is a dangerous thing. I tend to subscribe that confidence is a great thing. I want to see people confident. I want to see people bold, but I don't want to see people arrogant, and I don't want to see people that are focused too much on ego and humility, the ability to be intentional about that and understand that, I think is absolutely critical and is very endearing to those people around you. The third thing I would point to is urgency. Far too often, I run into people who are way too passive, way too patient, way too just wait and see. I'm not suggesting being in a hurry, but I am suggesting demonstrating a level of urgency. I think if you do that in your day in, day out efforts, I think you'll find greater success. I would point to integrity, and I shouldn't need to say anything more, but in today's world, I don't necessarily take it for granted. I think people are allowed to make mistakes. People are allowed to be human. I'm not suggesting that that's not the case. But if you wake up every day and you can try to focus on being a high character individual, on doing the right thing, I think that good things can and will happen. The next piece I would point to is accountability. Over time, there are people who ultimately enjoy the great times and take great credit for that. But when things don't go well, when we do make mistakes, when we fall short, we have to be accountable for that. And again, I think that that's something that requires some level of courage and confidence. But I would ask you all to think about how accountable you've been, either in your relationships or within your work or within your general journey. I would point to transparency. And what I try to say here is it ties probably to integrity, but tell the truth. And I think that you'll find that if you're transparent over time with your processes and where you're at or how you're thinking about something, I think that again it will warm and build bridges to others on your team. I would point to being empathetic for others, particularly if you're in a leadership role. Listen more than you talk. That alone will build more bridges. Celebrate others, recognize their achievements, and invest again in that growth and development. But empathy for others, particularly those on your team, I can tell you is to me a critical driver of leadership success. And then the thing I would close on out of these 9 keys is don't take it too seriously. Try to have fun. I remind people across the Twins organization almost every single day. We are a Major League Baseball team. This isn't rocket science. Try to have fun. Try to bring humor. Try to bring joy into whatever it is you're doing. Life is way too short, and fun to me is an absolutely critical tonic to anything that might ail you. As I think to the future, I wanted to touch on, I'm excited about the 2025 Twins. I think our club is really well positioned for success. I think there's a lot of focus on what we haven't added in the offseason. I tend to focus more on what we have in-house. We have one of the best pitching staffs in baseball. And if Carlos Correa, Byron Buxton, Royce Lewis are just who I think they are and are healthy, I really like our chances to win the American League Central in 2025. We learned a lot of lessons from what 2024 threw us, particularly the last 6 weeks of the season, and I'm optimistic for the future. I touched on the ownership piece. The Pohlad family have been great stewards of the Twins, but if the team is sold, I think that creates real opportunity, certainly for those of us in the organization or affiliated with the organization, but most importantly for our fans. Our fans have been great, unbelievable supporters of Twins baseball, Minneapolis, St. Paul, the upper Midwest, Twins territory. This is a great baseball market, and I think you're going to see this market come alive around Twins baseball in the months to come. I also think one of the great blessings is Target Field, and I would use this time to invite everybody on this call to take a minute, come down and see a ball game this spring or this summer. It's a unbelievably great ballpark, and we're really focused on a master plan to ensure that Target Field remains one of the great ballparks in America. And then I would also just touch on our industry, Major League Baseball. The sport itself, the game itself remains our greatest strength. But this commissioner, Rob Manfred, I think has done a great job of challenging some of the sacred cows. And again, I think the lesson here is what are your sacred cows? What are those sacred cows that we deal with all of our respective businesses and or journeys? In baseball, we've had a number of them. The pitch clock was a great innovation. I think what we're going to be doing around looking to the future around automated balls and strikes in terms of umpiring and getting calls right. I look to the future in terms of how we're going to be dealing with the schedule and perhaps opportunities to shorten the season or have baseball played in the Olympics or what other technologies, the way we're going to distribute Twins baseball on television this year with a streaming option for the first time. All of these things are aimed at moving the game forward, moving the brand forward. And I think that those are the things that we constantly need to be focused on. So with that, I'm going to close and just say it is an absolute honor to be part of the UND community. I am excited to be on the board of the University of North Dakota Alumni Foundation board, and always proud to be a University of North Dakota graduate, and wish you all the best, and go UND. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. We appreciate you taking the time today, and thanks to everyone else for attending either online or at the Union Social Stare. Join us on February 12th when we welcome the Associate Professor of Sociology and former Chair of University Senate at UND, Dr. Liz Legursky. Have a great rest of your week.